She was fired for saving a life, but the man she saved had the power to bring the entire hospital to its knees. The sharp click of Dr. Maya Carter's heels echoed across the sterile white tiles of Horizon West Medical Center. Each step felt swallowed by the thick, suffocating air that gripped the corridor. Patients turned to look. Nurses froze mid-shift, their eyes filled with unease and confusion. Then, like a gavel striking in a courtroom, Director Keaton Blake's voice shattered the silence. "You're fired, Dr. Carter. And people like you should never have made it this far. People like you." He didn't have to explain. Everyone in that hallway understood exactly what he meant. It wasn't just cruel. It was deliberate, coded, racist. In that single breathless moment, the entire hospital stood still. Doctors paused mid-suture. Patients held their breath. All eyes locked on the black woman, with her head held high, betrayed by the very place she had given 10 years of her life. No defense, no chance to speak, no second look. Maya didn't argue. She simply reached for her name badge and unpinned it with grace. Then gently, she laid it down on the reception desk, right beside her crisp white coat. It was spotless, not a trace of blood, and yet it had become the symbol of a system that had just turned its back on her. "I saved a life," she said, her voice so calm it sent chills. "And if that's wrong, then maybe this place has forgotten what medicine was ever meant to be." What no one knew was that the man she saved that day wasn't just a nameless drifter. He was Elijah Monroe, a man with enough power to make this entire hospital pay. That night, just as the clock struck 11, Dr. Maya Carter was folding her white coat, ready to end her shift, when the automatic doors swung open with a soft ding. A man stumbled in, thin, mud-caked, his clothes torn and soaked in blood. He collapsed right in the middle of the lobby, gasping out 2 desperate words before slipping into unconsciousness. "Help me." The entire night staff froze. A few nurses exchanged hesitant glances. At the front desk, receptionist Sophie didn't even look up from her phone. She muttered under her breath, "No insurance, no treatment. Rules are rules." Maya didn't think. In an instant, she was at his side, checking his pulse, his breath. Both were weak, irregular. Every cell in her body screamed the same thing. If they waited even 1 more minute, he would die. She shouted, "Prep Trauma Room 3, page Dr. Alvarez, now." Sophie finally looked up. "Dr. Carter, you're violating protocol. To hell with the rules. We're here to save lives, not check insurance cards." The next morning, Maya walked into the hospital steadily and composed, knowing in her heart she had done the right thing. But instead of thanks, or even quiet acknowledgement from leadership, she was summoned to the main lobby during the busiest hour of the day. Director Keaton Blake stood before the crowd, his face cold as steel. "You wasted hospital resources without proper authorization, a serious violation. As of this moment, you are no longer employed at Horizon West." The words hit like a blade. Maya stood frozen. She had believed that integrity, doing what was right, would be protected. But at this hospital, policy mattered more than a human life. She had expected the disciplinary hearing to happen behind closed doors. What Maya didn't expect was for Keaton Blake to turn it into a public execution. In front of doctors, nurses, patients, and the entire administrative staff, he marched to the center of the lobby, his voice booming like he was delivering a political speech. "This is what happens when someone thinks they can operate above the system. Dr. Carter unilaterally used hospital equipment, personnel, and an emergency room on an unidentified man, with no documents, no insurance, no financial coverage, a homeless nobody. Then he turned, eyes locking onto Maya, and let his lips curl into a smug, cutting smile. "People like you should remember your place." He didn't need to elaborate. Everyone understood exactly what he meant. The lobby fell into a heavy silence. That insult didn't just target her actions. It cut straight to her skin, her background, her place in society. No one spoke up. No one even looked at her. Just downward glances, cowardly, complicit eyes that refused to meet injustice head-on. As Maya walked out through the glass doors of the hospital, her hand clutching the bag with her name tag and folded coat, the only person waiting for her was Marcus Johnson, the black security guard who had greeted her with respect every day for 6 years. But today, he lowered his head, didn't say a word, didn't even meet her eyes. Maya paused, just for a second, hoping for something, a nod, a sigh, even the flicker of disapproval, but there was nothing, only silence, and the soft hiss of the hospital doors closing behind her. Like the end of a decade. She'd been betrayed. She hadn't by an entire system she once believed stood for justice. On the cramped city bus rattling toward the modest neighborhoods of East Side, Maya sat pressed against the window, her hand still clenched around the name badge that no longer meant anything. The winter air outside was biting, but it was nothing compared to the hollow chill tightening in her chest. And then, like a film reel playing in reverse, that night came rushing back in vivid detail. The automatic doors had burst open, wind trailing the man who collapsed onto the lobby floor. Blood from his shoulder and head slowly pooled across the white tiles. His voice, barely a whisper, broke the silence. "Help me." A final plea. Maya could still see the look in his eyes, wild with fear, begging, utterly drained, as if he already knew. No one was going to help him. And Sophie, still glued to her phone, tapping long manicured nails against the screen like nothing had happened. No insurance, no treatment, hospital policy. She didn't even look up. The entire night crew stood frozen, statues in scrubs. No one moved, no one called a doctor, no one lifted a finger. But Maya did. She stepped forward, alone. No questions, no hesitation. She knew, deep in her bones, that if no one intervened, that man would die. And if she let that happen, she wouldn't be a doctor anymore, at least not in the way that mattered to her. Now, sitting on the bus, she didn't cry, but her chest ached with a silent, crushing weight. Not because she'd been fired, but because of the brutal truth that had finally settled in. In the place she once called her second home, compassion had been replaced by insurance clauses. And she had been the last one left who still believed that medicine should follow ethics, not rules. The next morning, after a sleepless night that felt more like a blur than rest, Maya woke up to the first notification on her phone, and it stopped her cold. It was a social media post from Sophie, the hospital's receptionist, sitting right at the top of her feed. "Some people need to learn how to respect the rules. Rules are rules. Save the wrong guy, and suddenly you think you're a hero? Rules exist for a reason. Justice served." Below it, dozens of comments poured in, not just from admin staff, but from doctors. Doctors who had once stood shoulder to shoulder with Maya in the ER. Doctors who had once fought beside her to keep patients alive during the worst shifts. Now they were cheering on her downfall. Not one person defended her. Not a single comment pushed back. She kept scrolling. Then she saw his name, Dr. Luis Alvarez, the only Latino doctor at Horizon West, the man who had been on shift with her that night, the one she believed would speak up. Not just because he knew what really happened, but because he had felt the sting of discrimination himself. Maya sent him one short message. "Thank you for helping me last night. If you could say what really happened, I'd know I wasn't alone. The message showed, seen, but he never replied. Maya set the phone down. It wasn't Sophie's post that cut the deepest. It was the silence from the one person she thought might still stand with her. And in that moment, she understood something heartbreaking. At Horizon West, compassion had become a luxury, and truth had become too dangerous for anyone to touch. In a system fueled by fear, self-preservation, and bureaucracy, Maya was the only one left who still believed saving a life should never come with conditions. 3 days after being fired, Maya's tiny apartment was drowned in silence. Every tick of the wall clock felt like it was knocking directly against her chest. She had gone from someone so busy she barely had time for a proper meal, to now sitting motionless, staring at her phone screen, waiting for something she couldn't even name. Then the phone rang, an unknown number. She hesitated, then picked up. "Hello, Doctor. Maya Carter. This is Thomas Reed, legal counsel for Monroe Holdings. I need to meet with you immediately regarding the man you saved that night." Maya held her breath. In that split second, a flood of worst-case scenarios rushed through her mind. A lawsuit, a formal charge, being dragged into some messy legal spiral. "If this is about me violating hospital policy," she said slowly, "please understand. I was just trying to save a life." The man's voice cut in, warm but firm. "No, ma'am, quite the opposite. The man you saved is Elijah Monroe, CEO of Monroe Holdings, one of the largest healthcare corporations in the country, and he is deeply grateful to you." Maya froze. The bloodied man from that night, the one no one dared to touch, wasn't some nameless drifter. He was a man powerful enough to shake the very system that had just thrown her out. Emotion welled up in her throat. "I only did what was right," Maya whispered, her hand trembling. "But why? Does doing the right thing feel from attorney Thomas Reed?" Maya received news. Horizon West Medical Center was holding an all-staff meeting. The agenda? An official announcement regarding her termination. Inside the massive conference room, Director Keaton Blake stood under the spotlight as if addressing a panel of honored guests. "We need every employee to understand," he declared. "Adherence to protocol is non-negotiable. Unilaterally, treating an unqualified individual is a serious breach of conduct. Dr. Maya Carter has been dealt with accordingly. And let this be a warning to anyone who thinks they're above the system." Scattered applause followed. Sophie smirked in the corner. Dr. Alvarez sat silently at the far end of the table, eyes fixed on the floor. Though she was no longer employed there, Maya still tried to access the records from that night in the ER. But the system had already locked her out. Passwords changed. All documentation related to the unidentified patient, from security footage to medical logs to staff rotations, gone. When Thomas attempted to request the data through external legal channels, the hospital responded with a cold, sterile letter. The stored data either no longer exists or does not pertain to any legally recognized emergency case. Maya sat in her small kitchen, staring at a cup of tea gone cold. She had believed that maybe, just maybe, a single piece of evidence, a video clip, a medical chart, a timestamp, would be enough to prove she had done the right thing. But now, the truth had been buried, paved over by concrete walls of power and manipulation. And in this system, where rules were designed not to protect patients, but to shield those in power, someone like Maya had no space to speak. Just as Maya was beginning to accept the bitter truth that the system could erase every trace of her existence, An unexpected voicemail appeared in her inbox. The sender? Marcus Johnson, the security guard who had lowered his eyes and said nothing the day she was fired. Dr. Carter, I can't stay silent anymore. There's a recording, and I think you need to hear it. The recording began with background noise, paper shuffling, muffled chatter from the admin office. Then came Keaton Blake's voice, unfiltered, unmasked, unashamed. That arrogant black woman needs to learn her place. I've been waiting for a reason to get rid of her. She saved a bum? Perfect. Maya sat frozen, not because she was shocked, but because hearing that level of hate spoken aloud, so raw and deliberate, cut deeper than silence ever could. And just as that truth hit her, Elijah Monroe, the man she had saved, stepped forward. No longer the bloodied figure slumped on a hospital floor. Now, he stood tall as a titan of the healthcare industry. Billionaire, chairman of Monroe Holdings, a voice powerful enough to shake the pillars of medicine itself. I watched a woman put a stranger's life above her own career. Now, I want to return that act of courage. Not just for her, but for everyone the system left behind. Elijah launched an independent investigation. Every email, every diagnosis, every case of treatment denial was pulled from the shadows and examined. Patients of color, once silent, began to speak. Whispers turned to testimonies. Financial records once buried suddenly lit up as evidence, and as the light pushed further into the darkness, the truth could no longer hide. Maya had been buried by the system, but now she was the spark setting off a reckoning no one saw coming. A counterattack, not waged with rage, but with truth. Undeniable, irreversible truth. The Horizon West Medical Center gala glittered with lights, crystal chandeliers, and champagne flutes. Inside the grand ballroom of the Carlton Hotel, Keaton Blake appeared in a sleek black tuxedo, flashing the kind of confident smile that made it seem like the whole world revolved around him. "We are proud to announce," he said, raising his glass before a crowd of hundreds, media, investors, and hospital elites, that our hospital has achieved record profits this past quarter. A pause. He smirked. An efficient healthcare system doesn't just save lives, it generates returns. Polite laughter, applause rippled through the room. But then, the LED screen behind him flickered, then went black. A beat of confusion. Then the screen lit up again, and this time it wasn't a hospital highlight reel. It was audio. Keaton's own voice echoing across the ballroom. "That arrogant black woman needs to learn her place." Another clip. "We've rejected 312 Black and Latino patients this month. Excellent work, Sophie." Gasps. Eyes turned from the screen to Keaton, now pale, frozen, and it was only the beginning. Next came internal meeting recordings, tampered data files designed to deny care, emails revealing embezzlement, hospital funds siphoned into a political campaign for Keaton's cousin. The air in the ballroom turned cold. Chairs creaked as guests shifted uncomfortably. Steady, measured footstep. From the entrance, Maya Carter walked in. Not with a speech, not with vengeance, just truth. "I didn't plan this," she said calmly, her voice cutting through the silence. "I just recorded the truth and let it speak for itself." At that moment, FBI agents entered, dressed in black, quiet but firm. "Keaton Blake," one agent said, stepping forward, "you are under arrest for systemic racial discrimination, financial misconduct, and obstruction of justice." The sound of handcuffs clicked into place like a final verdict, and in the very room where applause had once followed his every word, there was now only silence. Heavy, shameful, unforgiving. Following the explosive gala night, headlines flooded the media. Director Keaton Blake arrested during awards ceremony. But what happened next didn't just make headlines. It redefined what justice and medical ethics truly meant. At a nationally televised press conference hosted by Monroe Holdings the very next morning, Elijah Monroe, the billionaire once mistaken for a nameless vagrant, stepped up to the podium. His voice was calm, his gaze piercing. Dr. Maya Carter didn't just save my life. She saved an entire healthcare system poisoned by bias, greed, and organized silence. He paused. Eyes scanned the room, locking briefly with each stunned reporter. If I hadn't been Elijah Monroe, CEO of a billion-dollar company, if I'd just been another uninsured black man, I would have died that night. Then came Maya. Gone was the worn white coat. She now stood tall in a crisp navy suit, poised and unshaken. Her voice was measured, her eyes unwavering. Change doesn't start in boardrooms or quarterly reports. It begins in the hearts of the people who practice medicine, in the split-second moment when you choose to save a life, without asking for a wallet or a home address. The room fell silent, not from fear, but reverence. Each word cut deeper than statistics or scandals, because deep down, it asked a question we all must face. Where are we placing human worth in today's healthcare system? And sometimes, all it takes is one person choosing to do the right thing in silence, to make an entire system roar with shame. 6 months after Director Keaton Blake's arrest, a new plaque was mounted in front of the building that once symbolized unchecked power and discrimination. The morning sun caught the glint of the freshly polished letters. Maya Carter Health Center. Care without conditions. A crowd filled the hospital grounds, patients who had once been turned away, young doctors inspired by courage, and silent bystanders who finally found their voice. Now, all clapping in unison, welcoming a new chapter in medicine. Meanwhile, in a federal prison 300 kilometers away, Keaton Blake was bent over, scrubbing a toilet floor with the same hands he once used to pound his chest in pride at a prestigious gala. A corrections officer walked in and handed him a slim envelope. "Mail for you." From Dr. Maya Carter inside was an invitation to the hospital's renaming ceremony. Tucked beside it was a newspaper, front page bold and unmistakable. Doctor fired for saving a life becomes national symbol of healthcare reform. And handwritten at the bottom, in Maya's graceful script, sometimes being pushed out of the wrong place is how the universe leads you to the right one. Back at the ceremony, Marcus Johnson, now head of security, stepped onto the stage, microphone in hand, eyes steady, as he looked into the live television cameras. If you had ever respected her, maybe today you'd still be sitting in that director's chair. The entire hall rose to their feet. Maya stepped forward, eyes shimmering with quiet pride. She didn't need revenge, because now she had built something bigger than any vendetta, a living symbol that rendered cruelty powerless. And that was the real victory.